the new thing they do. Am I muted? No. Right. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you. Thanks for coming along. I just want to let you know that I am streaming on Facebook as well. So I'm going to get started. So I have done this teaching session a few times before, and it's always really popular. And I just think it's a really useful thing to talk about, actually, because I know that there's always people, you know, looking to work in breastfeeding, chest feeding, lactation support, and not always knowing where they can go and what they can do. So that's what today is about. This is me, for anyone who doesn't know. My name's Anna Lagrange. I'm a mum to 3. I live in Kent in the UK. I'm a paediatric nurse, been a paediatric nurse for almost 21 years now. So I've been working with new families for a very, very long time. I became an IBCLC, which stands for International Board Certified Lactation Consultant, about 5 years ago. Actually, it's 6 years since I've done the exam. And I do work with families. I love working with families in lactation, but my real passion is actually educating others. And I've done all sorts. I've taught peer support courses, I teach my own courses, and I'm also a meditation teacher, so I like to incorporate a lot of that into my practice and what I teach. And I'm also a student doing a master's in positive psychology, because the more that I've learned about this, the more I think it's actually really, really relevant and really important that we are adding in these tools and techniques and knowledge that we have, based in a lot of science, actually, about things that we can do for ourselves and things that parents can do for themselves to have a better, happier, and just have, you know, life, but also have tools on hand for when those tricky moments in life come along, which are quite often, but can be, you know, particularly stark when we just had a baby. I'm sure many of you would agree with that. And if you guys are anything like me, I guess what I'm saying is this talk is for anyone who loves talking about birth, babies and motherhood, that you love, or you're interested in helping those in your local community get the right support and the right help, that you enjoy working with people and you want people to have a better experience and have a happier experience. And perhaps you've seen where you are that breastfeeding support isn't adequate. Perhaps there isn't any, or there isn't enough, or people don't know how to access it, or there's all sorts of things that go on in breastfeeding support that mean that there's lots of areas, not just in the UK, all around the world actually, where people struggle to get good quality, realistic, up-to-date, evidence-based breastfeeding support. And I'm really passionate about changing that, because there's so much room for improvement. I'm going to go over some of the stats for you in a minute. So why is breastfeeding support so important? Because you hear us hammering on about it all the time, as people who are passionate about you know, breastfeeding, and it's because there is, well, because of some of these statistics, really, that we believe, you know, breastfeeding support is actually really integral to people having a better experience. So we know that new families need support, not just with feeding, just generally. In our culture, generally, there's not a huge amount of support for families compared to perhaps other cultures where they would have extended family around, where there is a lot more of new mothers, new parents being looked after by their local community or perhaps by their extended family. You know, we've all heard that kind of it takes a village to raise a baby kind of thing, but often people are very isolated. And I'm not just talking about in the pandemic, I'm talking about pre-pandemic and hopefully post-pandemic as well, but we're still as a culture quite isolated in those early weeks, months and even years. But particularly it's been stark, hasn't it, over the last 12 months for people, 15 months now I think it is. And wherever we are in the world, breastfeeding issues occur. And I've been learning this since I've been a lactation consultant and had the privilege of teaching people in different countries, and including countries where rates are really high. I also have the privilege of meeting other lactation specialists who come from countries where rates are really high. So they explain to me, and what I've seen as well in practice, is that painful nipples, worrying your baby hasn't got enough milk, these things happen everywhere, but it's the way that we support people with that, the solutions we give to breastfeeding problems, that makes a difference with how breastfeeding actually goes. So actually in the UK for about 50 years now, most babies are not breastfed. So that has an impact on the education and knowledge of people around us in our local communities. We also live in a society that sexualizes breasts, which is very relevant to actually the rates of breastfeeding, how people feel about it, how people feel worried about feeding in public, worried about other people's opinions. The fact that breasts are often thought of as sexual objects rather than a method of feeding a baby, and that all can be very problematic and really cause some of the issues in our society anyway. And as I've just already touched on, breastfeeding friendly solutions are not always given for breastfeeding problems, and this is probably the main change that I would like to see, not just in our communities but also in our health service as well, in fact particularly in our health service. And I say this as a huge lover of the NHS and somebody who worked in the NHS for many years, including giving infant feeding support. And you know, back then, before I got the right kind of training, really, I didn't know what some of these breastfeeding friendly solutions were, and I'm sure there have been some changes, but I still know there's lots of areas where this could still be improved upon. So what are the experiences of new parents? Well, we know that breastfeeding is biologically expected by both babies and women's bodies. So that can mean when breastfeeding or chest feeding, whichever language we want to use, is very, very difficult and it stops early, that can have a really negative emotional impact, sometimes even traumatic, on that parent. And we see it all the time, don't we, when we're perhaps looking at stories online about infant feeding. There's often a lot of pain, distress, hurt, arguments, really heated discussions around the pain that people feel because they're no longer able to feed the baby in perhaps the way they wanted to, in a way that they felt they should. 80% of breastfeeding mothers say they stopped breastfeeding before they wanted to. That's really high, isn't it? That's a really shocking statistic, and it's just not good enough. And one of the reasons that they give for stopping is lack of support. And then moving on to, what you guys are interested in, we know that back in 2018, and this is due to an audit done by a group in the UK, they found that 44% of breastfeeding services have been cut, so almost 50%. Well, a lot's happened since 2018, hasn't it? A huge amount, and I dread to think what those levels are now. We do know that many groups had to stop in the pandemic. They just weren't COVID safe. It was really hard to keep the breastfeeding support services going where volunteers were there, because it was just really hard to manage and know that everyone was safe there. And of course, we know that so many areas of health visiting and also hospital trusts were redeployed into other areas because of the pandemic, and therefore breastfeeding services have been cut to an enormous rate, although we don't know what they are right now. So this is something that, for any of you who feel passionate about this area of infant feeding, I really encourage you to consider the difference that you could make in your own community, or whether that's in real life where you live, or whether it's at your place of work, or whether it's online. So this is what I'm hoping my talk today is going to encourage you to do, to know that you can make a difference to breastfeeding families, that you can help families have a more happier and healthier connected early parenting experience. And I really want to show you the different pathways in which you can do that. There's so much space for this. We do not have enough people working in lactation in the UK. And by the way, I know people watching here won't all be in the UK. I know that there is lactation needed support required all around the world, and certainly on my courses, not some of the courses I'm going to talk about today are UK specific, but on my courses, absolutely, we always have people from other countries, and it's very, very welcome. I love having a real mix of people from different backgrounds experiencing different things. It's fascinating. It's a great learning experience for all of us. So yeah, is this something you like to do? Would you like to become confident in giving good quality breastfeeding and wellbeing support in your community? I really hope that everyone who's watching this would answer yes to that question. So I'm going to start off with something which is very, very much available here in the UK in lots and lots of areas, and that is peer supporting. And I do hope now that we're coming out of this pandemic and services are picking up and getting, you know, hopefully getting back to normal. Obviously, every area is different. I don't know what's happening in every single area. I know here in Kent, things are still quite not happening. But I encourage you to go and find out, because peer support is such a wonderful thing to be able to do. This is how I started off. I was a paediatric nurse, but how I really started off working in my community, in my actual town, was as a breastfeeding peer supporter. So breastfeeding peer supporter roles tend to be volunteer. They're not always. Sometimes they are paid, but usually they expect you to have a little bit of experience before taking a peer supporter paid role. But again, not always. Every area is different. So it's worth finding out what is available in your area. So it's a volunteer position. If it's a volunteer position or paid, they usually give you the training. So they provide the training free. When I did my training, certainly there was a creche as well, so my kids were looked after. I had one then at that point who wasn't in school. And it might be provided by your local authority. So here in Kent, it's run by the health visiting team and the public health local team as well through the children's centres. They normally expect you to then volunteer in return for the cost of training you, and you would have support with doing that. And they usually would have a stipulation that you would have breastfed for around 6 or 9 months. Again, every charity is different, and that's something you have to have a conversation with them about. Really wonderful way to get experience of working in your local community with parents and learning about breastfeeding that way. And some examples are the Association for Breastfeeding Mothers do have peer supporters that they train. I think the NCT do have some as well. And this is some of the names of the charities, and this is kind of looking more at the next level. So if, you know, 18 hours of training, you know, that doesn't excite you enough, you want to do something a little bit more, get your teeth into something a little bit more, then you might want to become a breastfeeding counsellor level. So breastfeeding counsellors may, again, often trained by charities. So some of the charities here in the UK, and also La Leche League, for example, is in other countries around the world as well. So La Leche League leaders are trained to a breastfeeder counsellor level. Usually takes around about 18 months to 2 years to train. Again, it's voluntary work, so you wouldn't pay for your training, but you'd have somebody that you work alongside, you'd help run groups, and then you would sort of pay back that training, as it were, for running a group in your own area with local families. The NCT also have a couple of options. They have a breastfeeding counsellor, and they've also got a volunteer breastfeeding counsellor. So some of their positions are paid and some aren't. And they've got shorter courses all the way to a whole degree level course. So that's why the cost disparity is there. But go and have a look at the NCT website. That's the National Childbirth Trust. Then we've also got the Association of Breastfeeding Mothers. And as I mentioned in that last slide, they run a lot of breastfeeding groups around the country. They've got 2 levels of training. They start off with a helper, which is sort of like their peer support level, and then they have a breastfeeding counsellor level. And then there's also the breastfeeding network, so they run a phone line. A lot of their support is done on the phone, but they also do they have groups as well. The thing is, it's a bit strange, but you've also just got to find out what's available in your local area. You've got to look around, you're going to have to Google, you're going to have to search, because there's no standard across the country. Every single area has got a different thing that goes there. And the thing is, if there's not much in your area, but you feel really passionately that volunteering and doing something like this is where you want to go, you can absolutely seek out one of these organisations and speak to them about it and just say, look, there isn't anything in my local town. I'd really like to start something up. Can you train me and support me with how to do it? And a lot of the time they will do that, as long as they are able to support you thoroughly and properly in that setting. I do know people that have done that for charity, so it's a great way to get some really good training, tons of experience, and really make a very impactful difference in your own community. And I always cover becoming an IBCLC or a lactation consultant, because I know I get a lot of queries about this and people are very, very interested in becoming an IBCLC. So as I said before, it stands for International Board Certified Lactation Consultant. It's a bit of a mouthful. The reason we use the full title so much is because the word lactation consultant isn't really on its own. It's not regulated. Anybody can use it. It's not like the word doctor, which anybody can't use. Lactation consultant, they can. So it's just so that anyone who's coming to work with you or looking you up knows that you're on a register, that you've got the International Board Certified Lactation Consultant exam that you've passed. And this is what an IBCLC has to do to pass the exam. Excuse me, I'm just going to drink water. So before they start, they have to have a health degree, or they study the equivalent of a health degree, around 14 subjects of, well, they set out subjects in sort of things like biology, physiology, oh, I can't remember them all now, nutrition, things like that. They've also spent 1,000 hours supporting breastfeeding families. They've also spent 90 hours in a specific lactation education program, or specific lactation education programs. I say it doesn't have to be one program, although you can get 90-hour programs, and they're fantastic, such a good way to study. But a lot of people kind of pick different classes and put it all together, and then you have a 4-hour exam and a blueprint that you have to study to and pass. So it's really quite comprehensive. It takes most people around between 2 and 5 years to complete. But really great if you know this is your passion, specifically if you've already got as well a health degree and you're already working in lactation a lot, then this is a great route to go down, because it just really gives you that absolute depth of knowledge and understanding that can help with some of those really trickier, more complex breastfeeding problems. And I'm not going to lie, sometimes I do miss my peer supporter days when, you know, breastfeeding support seemed quite simple and it was kind of latching and reassuring, and sometimes I do miss working in those settings. I certainly miss working at my local children's centre. It's such a lovely thing to do. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my training now. So at the Mindful Breastfeeding School, we are training online at the moment, at least until the end of this year. Our training will be online, and it's slightly different. One of the differences is that I don't have any stipulation on whether somebody's breastfed, chest-fed their own child or not. You don't even have to have had a child. You just have to have a passion for supporting families with feeding in your local community, or, you know, somewhere. That is a stipulation for being on the course. So you may already work with parents or expectant parents, or you may be wanting to do this as a totally new thing and thinking, yeah, this is something I want to do. I want to set up and I want to, you know, create a career, a job helping new or expectant families. And it includes a Mindful Breastfeeding Practitioner Certificate, and I'm going to go through that a bit more in a bit. It's an accredited course, and it's a 12-week course, but it doesn't have to be done in the 12 weeks. 12 weeks is the quickest that you can do it in. So as far as I'm aware, the Mindful Breastfeeding course is the only breastfeeding education course that includes the brain-body connection as as the main part of the learning, as well as all that stuff I was talking about, that sort of good quality, evidence-based, up-to-date, realistic lactation education. The lactation education part of it is to a peer support level, so that gives you an idea of the sort of level of training it is. But it also gives you mindfulness and positive psychology tools for supporting the mental well-being of the clients that you're working with. And the beauty of that, which we have discovered since we've been teaching this course the last 3 years, and then when I was using the tools myself before then, is that actually by prioritizing calmness, relaxation, connection between the parents and baby, it really, really helps breastfeeding to go better. So a little bit about the classes. Basically, this course would help you to run antenatal classes, one-to-one sessions with expectant parents. We've got a postnatal 6-week course that you can teach, which is all around getting breastfeeding support, but also mindful, calm, and just general, just lovely supporting environment and groups to come along to. And also be able to give postnatal peer support level lactation support. It's totally flexible. So although I give you antenatal classes that you can run, a set antenatal class and a set postnatal course, if you are already working as a doula, as a hypnobirthing teacher, as an antenatal teacher, as a nanny, as a nursery nurse, I'm trying to think of all the different people I've trained, as a health professional, these tools you learn are completely flexible, and you'll be able to fit them into your current role or your business or your brand in whatever way you want. So you can take the courses that are already set up for you, or you can adjust and adapt things in a way that works for you. It's completely up to you. I really love this from Rebecca, who's one of the neighbourhood midwives. She said that she ran her mindful breastfeeding antenatal workshop, and she had really positive feedback from everybody who came along. They said that the course helped them to have really realistic expectations of their baby and of breastfeeding, but that they loved the positive and calmness that was, you know, injected into that as well, which was really nice feedback to hear from me. So I am starting another course. I run these courses 3 times a year, mindful breastfeeding supporter courses, and I've got one starting on the 16th of June. You're very welcome to book. Bookings open now. If you'd like to talk about it with me more and cover more, just if you want to have a bit of a conversation about which of these routes would be best for you personally, if you want to talk about what your vision is, what you would like for yourself and for your local community, what you think would be most appropriate, then I love to have calls with people, and I'm going to pop a link for that in the chat box in a second. So you're very welcome to just discuss it with me further. I fully understand that people would like to do that. I'm also going to do some Q&As about this in the next few weeks. We've got a Facebook group, and I'm going to invite you to that Facebook group as well, so that you can come and be in there. And even if you don't want to train with the Mindful Breastfeeding School, do come and join our Facebook group, because I talk about this. It's called the Mindful Breastfeeding Care Collective, and it's for people who really want to prioritise that emotional well-being, that think about that mind-body connection when they're giving you know, support to their family. So do come and join us in there. I do teaching sessions and Q&As and all sorts of things, but I'll be specifically doing Q&As in there this Friday and next Friday about the courses that I run for people who want to. And just to let you know that if anybody, the first 5 people to book from this session, from watching this webinar, would get a coaching session with me as well. So just to let you know a bit more about the course, there's a Kickstart option, which is the course in itself. So the 12 weeks of video classes, 2 interactive sessions where we kind of get really practical, the stuff we would normally do face-to-face, but we make it really fun online. It's worked really well over the last year and a bit. You get the class outlines and presentations so that you can run your own classes without just being ready to go, without having to create anything yourself or think anything. Or you can, as I said, you can be really flexible and put it in yourself. You get all the tools you need. So you get relaxation MP3s, you get resources, you get ongoing support in a private Facebook group just for those who are on the course. You get a pack of resources posted to you. You get things like a knitted boob. I haven't got one here to show you, but you get that. And you get continued ongoing support with me after you finish the course as well. For as long as you're a mindful breastfeeding practitioner, a supporter, you always get supervision, ongoing support from me. I would never leave people that I trained in breastfeeding support to just go and get on with it on their own. The support part of this is really, really, really important to me. I have another option as well, which is called Access All Areas. And some people like to do this because it really helps, the coaching side of it really helps you to get going and set things up as quickly as possible for yourself afterwards. Both versions, you get support with setting up your groups, you get access to other people who are already doing it so you can chat about it. But with this option, you get 7 months of one-to-one coaching with me, you get my Flourish coaching program, and you also get to be able to WhatsApp and message me. And we also get a half-day VIP together. And If you're in the UK, with the current state of things, we would do that face-to-face if you are comfortable and happy to do that, or we can do it online. I'm just going to share a little video with you. Oh, one question I get asked actually always is how quickly, you know, obviously it's an investment to come and train at the Mindful Breastfeeding School. I completely get that, and very different option to volunteering and, you know, not having to, you pay your volunteering training with the time that you give back to that organisation and to your community. So this is obviously a very different option, but I think it's really useful for people to know if they are putting this money in to training to do something, how quickly they could get a return on their investment. So if you were to run our 3-session antenatal course, and again, depending on your area and depending on how much you wanted to charge, we charge between £75 and £150 per couple, and one of our 6-week postnatal mindful breastfeeding groups. And if you had 4 to 6 couples or people in each one, you would take between £540 and £1,620 per month. So that gives you quite an idea of how quickly you'd be able to get that money back once your classes were running and you're advertising and inviting people to come along and join you in those classes. Obviously, people do other things. I've got people who run one-to-one sessions and charge more for that because they have a lot of their time with the family. I have people doing all sorts of different things. So that's just one example of what you might want to do. And here's just a little bit about the programme from a bird's eye view. So it's a 5-section programme. We start off with the basics, all the stuff you need to know about how breastfeeding works, about latch, about positioning. Then we talk about problem solving. So, you know, all those common problems that come up in breastfeeding, how do we solve them? And not just how do we solve them practically, but how do we use mindful breastfeeding for these common breastfeeding problems as well? And how do we use mindful breastfeeding to help lactation work well in the beginning and for parents to feel that calmer connection? Then we move on to discover, and the discover bit is all about understanding the science, discovering the science behind the mindful breastfeeding system. So understanding that mind-body connection, understanding, you know, about the subconscious and where that comes in learning to breastfeed, understanding, yeah, that's all that stuff really. Neuroplasticity, we talk about that as well. Neuroplasticity is our ability to change our thought processes in our brain. So kind of understanding where we have negative thought patterns and that we can quite simply and easily, not easily, but we can simply change them if we use the right tools and techniques. And that can be really, really helpful when we're working with parents and they're filled with self-doubt, and perhaps we know that this is a confidence issue and everything's working fine and their baby's feeding, and but they've kind of got themselves. I mean, you might recognize this. I certainly recognize it from when I had a really tricky breastfeeding experience with my daughter, sort of negative thought patterns that were going on in my head. So learning that you can take control of those, it can be really useful. We have experience. Experience is a section where you try out and use the tools for yourself so that you know how they feel. And the last section, which in lots of ways is the most exciting one, which is curate, which is thinking about then how you're going to take all of this knowledge, all of this stuff that you've learned in this 12-week course, and put it into services in your local area or online, or however it is you would like to do it, however you would like to help families yourself. I got a little message here from Rashmita.
And talk to you a little bit about my experience with the mindful breastfeeding practitioner course and the business coaching from Anna. My name is Rashmita Matharu, and I run a program called the Mama Level Up program, which is a program for a new first time. Hi there. I just wanted to come on and talk to you a little. I run a program called the Mama Level Up program, which is a program for new first-time moms, and it's all about mindful breastfeeding and baby sleep and mama mindset, and looking at all of these things together and helping new moms thrive in the first few months of motherhood. So I did the mindful breastfeeding practitioner course in November last year, and I have to say it is the best course that I have done on breastfeeding. I've done a few, but this was amazing. The content was so good, and everything was so clearly set out, so easy to follow, and the support that Anna gave was second to none. If I had any questions, she was always available to answer anything, and really, really knowledgeable about everything you can think of to do with breastfeeding. So if you were thinking of doing the course, I definitely would recommend it. I did the course with the one-to-one coaching with Anna, and I have to say that if you're on the fence, you're thinking about it, I definitely recommend doing the course with the coaching, because Anna's, if you're running a business, sometimes when you're so kind of fully immersed in things, you don't really see the blocks that you have, the things that are holding you back, because you're so stuck in the day-to-day and the doing stuff that it really, having Anna as a business coach really helped me, because I kept getting stuck at the same point every time, and I don't think I realized what I was doing until it took me kind of just talking things through with her, and then having someone from the outside look in and give you advice, and then they know where you get. It was really helpful. I couldn't recommend Anna enough. If anyone wants to talk to me about my experiences, I'd be happy to do that. If you think.
Okay. Thanks everyone. So I hope that was useful. It's nice words from Rashmita. Very kind of her. She's a lovely person to work with, and that is something that I love. I will love working with all of the practitioners that I've trained, and it's what's so exciting is seeing how people take the course and each do something so individual with it, and I really like that. You know, everybody's services have, you know, nuances, but also sometimes really big differences as well, and that just gets me really excited watching what other people are doing and how they're helping others in their community. And it's really nice that we all come together and support each other on a regular basis. I mean, the group is busy on a daily basis. There's always activity in there. It just feels like a really nice supportive place to be. So anybody who's watching got any questions? I'm just going to have a little look on Facebook to see if there's any questions on there. Oh, there is a couple of comments. Okay, it's just Emma saying hello. Right, for those people who are in the webinar, I'm just going to share with you the link for the course. I know a couple of you watching are already on the course, which is great. I'm very excited about teaching you. So there's the link for the course, which gives you all the options. And then I think it's really helpful if I can share with you. Oh no, didn't mean to do that. Hang on a second. I'm going to share this in a sec. I'm going to share with you the link for Acuity. So the Acuity link is so that you can book with me. Actually, do you know what? I'm going to put it in an email for you all. So the Acuity link is so that you can just book a call with me if you want to discuss it, if you want to ask me anything. Sorry, it's got very dark in here. I've gone very fuzzy. If you want to ask me anything about breastfeeding support, not just about my course, as I said, I'm really passionate about all kinds of breastfeeding support, whatever form it takes, as long as it's good quality and as long as it's you know, parent and baby friendly, and that it really does help, and it's the right support. So I'm really passionate about that good quality evidence-based support, whatever form it may come. So if you want to hop on a call with me, I'll be very happy to chat with you about your thoughts so you can think it through further. And thanks all of you that came tonight. Really appreciated you popping in. And if there isn't any questions from anybody, I will see you soon, maybe in the Facebook group or on the course. Night, everyone.